Serious, what really messed up thing did a teacher do to you? I had a restraining order against a family member. And the school knew and alerted all my teachers before events and open house. My art teacher decided she knew better than the court. And not only let him into a school event, but showed said family member all of my artwork and portfolio and divulged personal information about me. She somehow didn't get fired. Whacked me with a yardstick after I asked for the nth time to please use the bathroom. Then screamed at me when I pissed myself. MRS. Peacock was my personal Snape in 1st grade. I had several that treated me like crap in elementary school. I had one that twisted my arm, giving me an Indian burn for making a harmless joke as a 6-year-old. And another that took me into the hallway several times to literally scream at me. My 5th grade teacher would intentionally fail everything I did because my mom pissed her off. Also, I flunked a math course the year I was supposed to graduate and I had to go to another town for summer school. The summer school gives me all of these packets that I'm supposed to complete, but they come back wrong. So my sister lets me use a computer program, like a calculator that teaches you how to actually do the work, to complete the work. Still wrong. I have a neighbor help me. Still wrong. I have a really old friend who was going to college for engineering help me. Still wrong. As it turns out, someone at this school did all of the answers by hand and got them all wrong and they just assumed it was right this whole time. So they just passed me. Which was the good part. The months of hard work, frustration and stress was shitty though. I'm left-handed, so my writing in school was a little smudged. A student teacher on placement came up to me and flogged the back of my hand with a steel ruler. I've still got a scar from that. Edit. When my dad was in high school in the 60s, the teacher had it in for one of his friends who was left-handed, and would always whack him over the knuckles with his ruler for it. One day the teacher went to take a particularly big swing with his ruler, only to have my dad take it from him as he swung back over his shoulder for the wind up. In his white hot fury the teacher punched dad in the face, resulting in a black eye that he wore as a badge of honor among his classmates, as it was the final nail in the coffin for that particular teacher. New, much more progressive principal had taken over that year and wanted an excuse to get rid of the old school teachers still using corporal punishment. Made fun of a disability in front of the whole class multiple times. I have a prosthetic right leg. He would make fun of it all the time, impersonate me, ask me to walk better, and then some. Even change lyrics in a song the class was singing to joke about it one time. 4 years of that shitty. FCK that guy. In addition, he'd intentionally try to make things awkward with people dating, etc. I had dated a girl briefly in the class and for the next 2 years he would keep making jokes and trying to make everything more awkward than it needed to be. And did it to tons of others as well. One of those haha I'm your friend I joke to assholes. Dropped him from my contacts after high school when I realized how f***ed up it was in retrospect. Bonus point. Same guy likes a bunch of his students' bikini photos on Instagram. 35, now 45? Year-old dude liking a bunch of 17-year-old girls in bikinis. 10/10. FCKU. Cameron. A little more light-hearted than the other stories. In 3rd grade I was making a presentation in front of class. In the far back of the class I saw the substitute teacher pointing at her crotch and mouthing something under her breath. I was really confused. At the end of the presentation I just had to know what the heck she was doing. MRS. Smith. What's the matter? Commoners. Your zipper is unzipped. I looked down. My underwear was clearly showing. Everyone started to point and laugh. Nearly 20 years later and I still triple check to make sure that I zipped my pants. When I was in 6th grade, we walked across the street for ice cream as a class. I lost my shoe in the middle of a busy street and the cars were already coming both ways. But my teacher made me run out and get it. Same teacher would fail me on assignments for no reason. My English teacher in 8th grade hated me. So when she saw I had got full marks in a test, she grabbed my test sheet and scanned it with full attention to find any minor mistake. She found a spelling error and deducted a mark. A friend of mine had a spelling error in the same test, but he had only half a mark deducted for the same. She told other teachers I was obsessed with or in love with her or crazy. I wasn't. But I was suicidal. She said it was all for attention. I was the butt of every joke in the teacher's lounge. 2 other teachers told me. In 2nd grade, my male teacher picked me up and held me upside down in front of the class. I was wearing a dress and it fell down over my head so everyone saw my underpants and chest. Years later I found out he was fired because there were rumors going around that he did inappropriate things with his students. In grade 8, my geography teacher refused to use my name. She didn't like me because I was quiet and referred to me as a silly because she told me that's what I reminded her of. In grade 10, my health teacher used me as an example of someone who would be attacked by a predator because of how I presented myself. They weren't rumors. I had a cool history teacher in junior high. We'll call him MR.J. He was in his 20s and seemed relatable and was well liked by all of his students. I started wearing makeup this year. I'm sure it looked like shitty because I was going through my goth phase. Anyways, one day he asked me why I was wearing so much makeup. I said I liked it and thought it made me look better. Then he said, "You don't need makeup. Makeup isn't for girls that are already pretty." At the time I thought this was really nice and it always stuck with me. Fast forward to years later. We found out that this teacher went on to teach high schoolers. He was caught assisting a 16-17-year-old and is now in prison. So now, that nice comment he gave me in 7th grade feels really cringe. Edit. Turns out he was actually convicted of molesting a minor, so it went beyond texting. Just looked him up. Big yikes. Once my math teacher broke my $200 Beats headphones and refused to admit what she did. I then got ice for 2 days. She also claimed I cursed in class, but I didn't. Other students in the class said I did not curse. She didn't want to admit she was wrong and gave me 3 days of ice. I went to school without wearing a bra. I was 13 and completely flat-chested. But I guess the barest hint of nipple through my shirt enraged my teacher. She made me stand up in class and asked me if I thought it was appropriate to come to school dressed like I was while pointing at my chest. Then asked if I was showing off before ordering me to the principal. Nasty. Bitter old woman. Pose history teacher F-ked my older sister while she was still in high school. She consented to it, but she was still a student, so she was just foolish and he a creep. He's in prison now for demanding nudes from students to keep A's. I was in 1st grade with another girl and I being the only kids of color in either of the 1st grade classes. One of the other kids got lice and my teacher, horrible woman, decided to only bring out me and this other girl to the hallway and aggressively check our heads. As if to suggest we were dirty and the cause of the lice. I went home and innocently told my mom. Because me being 6, I hadn't realized what happened. My mom lost her shit. She threatened to sue the school district and demanded the teacher have disciplinary action. Nothing ever happened to the teacher, unfortunately. My mom only got a hefty apology from the principal and my teacher just never bothered me again. To this day, my mom still gets pissed talking about it and hates that teacher. When I was in 3rd grade, if you didn't have your homework done, the teacher would throw you a pity party. She would make you stand up and then have the entire class chant 1, 2, 3, or then she would put your name and the assignment in what she called the F tablet. She claimed that if you had a single assignment in the F tablet at the end of the year, she would fail you. You would also lose recess privileges. She was a giant flaming CNT. I'll go first. It's a story which I only remembered some years ago. I come from an immigrant family, Iraqi. I was always an extremely shy and introverted kid. Never talking much. So one day the teacher starts talking about anti-Semitism and he says how I am Iraqi, which means I hate Jews and I would love it if they all just died. Some people looked at me. For example, a buddy who sat next to me asking me if that's true. I said that that's not true and that I respect everybody regardless of religion, sex, or orientation or whatever, and I was really confused. It was not a joke because he didn't laugh, and even if it were a joke it's not a funny joke, and at that age many people will get brainwashed since they believe everything a teacher says. In the end nobody except the people in class knew about what happened, but that's now probably 7 years ago, and if I had said something to the principal, which I wish I did, the teacher would have probably gotten suspended. Sad that people like that are teachers. Kindergarten teacher would put us kids in the supply closet for punishment for the smallest things. Talking during nap time. Spilling paint. Etc. We all cried our eyes out if we were going to the timeout closet. Usually for about 15 minutes, but some kids were in there longer. She would also, while putting you in the closet, point a finger in your face and grab your face very close to hers, threatening to call your parents or go to the office. I would have nightmares for weeks after that. FCKU. MRS. E. In 3rd grade. My absolute bag of a teacher pulled the chair from under me and dragged me out of the classroom before I could get up. My family tried complaining about her to the school, but they wouldn't listen to us. It's been nearly 9 years and she's still f***ing teaching there. Pisses me off. My 2nd grade teacher mentally abused and yelled at me every chance she could get. I remember she would always give out these math puzzles and at the end of the year and I didn't know how to solve one of them. She made me come in for lunch and try to finish them. I remember after 3 lunches I was so close to finishing it. She said she wanted to look at it. Said there were too many eraser marks on it. Ripped it in half in front of me. And made me start from scratch. My parents submitted a lot of complaints about her to the school throughout the school year. They never did anything about it. Probably because she was retiring at the end of the year. FCKUMRS. My 4th grade teacher tried to get me diagnosed with multiple mental illnesses. Multiple times he straight up told my parents that I had mental illnesses that he wasn't qualified to diagnose. He did this because I was immature and he thought that by that age I should be more mature than I was. Threw tennis balls at me the class. During recess in 1st grade. My teachers played Right Said Fred's I'm Too SI. I can't remember if we were exercising. Or dancing. Or what. But I must have been singing it at home. Because my mom found out and threw a fit at the teachers. The next time we had recess. The teachers told everyone that we couldn't listen to music anymore. And it was my fault. I was bullied a lot. That didn't help. I told my pre-calc teacher I wanted to go into neuroscience and she straight up told me I wasn't smart enough for calculus and wouldn't never had the skills required to achieve that dream. And before you ask, no, I did not take calculus. Per her suggestion. And never went on to study neuroscience. She was so blunt when she spoke to me and I was so afraid of failure that I pretty much dropped the dream after high school. One of my high school teachers saw the cuts on my wrist and in a much louder tone than he normally speaks in. Asks if I'm a cutter in front of the entire class. I was freaking out on the inside, but thankfully my friend and crush at the time was really concerned about what he did and made sure I was alright. Still though, what the FCK? Maybe I'm being sensitive, but it really bothered me when I was in the 3rd grade learning cursive writing and my teacher held up my paper to the class of how not to do the practice sheet. After reading other people's comments, mine seems super mild. But I'll still leave it here. My preschool teacher told me that left-handed people were of the devil. As a natural left-handed person, she made me do everything right-handedly. I even forgot I was left-handed until high school. When I tried using my left hand to draw for whatever reason and was surprised how natural it felt. I remembered the teacher after that. And now I'm ambidextrous. So that's a silver lining, I guess. Had my 6th grade teacher flip my desk over, hitting me in the process to look for her F-king pen she never gave me in the first place. My 1st grade teacher would tell the boys if they walked like a girl then they would have to walk in the girls' line for the day. No idea what walking like a girl meant back then, and I still don't. However, one day I was accused of walking like a girl and was sent to walk in that line. It made me self-conscious about how I walked for decades. My kindergarten teacher actively encouraged kids to bully me, as well as pointing out every single mistake I made to the entire class. He also tried to get me under an ADHD watch thing 2 weeks after school started. I had barely turned 5. Years later he was a substitute teacher for basically all of 3rd, 5th for me. And every time he had at least one story to tell about me being stupid in kindergarten. My 2nd grade teacher told me I was a terrorist simply because of my religion. She also tried to fail me so I'd be held back a year, but that backfired since I was in the GT program at my school. This was in primary school. And I would have been about 8, I think. I grew up with pretty severe ADHD and my music teacher in particular didn't have a lot of patience for me. She used to call me a pest and didn't like my fidgeting. I love singing though. So I decided to join the choir. On my first day I fidgeted a fair bit and she immediately stopped everything and told me to leave. I refused, so she asked the other students to raise their hands if they wanted me gone. Not everyone did, but most of the students raised their hands. I left and cried. As someone with ADHD, I can safely say that fidgeting is an issue. But it shouldn't be too much of a problem. That music teacher of yours sounds like an absolute witch. One of the administrators at my middle school essentially told me it was my fault that I was being bullied after I tried to get help. I gave them a list of the people I felt were bullying me. And he apparently interviewed them and they all stated I was a rude person. Since I was apparently rude, it was my fault I was being bullied. I was like 12 and had undiagnosed autism. My rudeness stemmed from these people repeatedly doing things that triggered me. They constantly invaded my personal space. Looked through my purse once. That had pads in it. Since I was on my period. Threw a piece of paper that absolutely reeked of perfume or cologne at me. I'd snap at them and respond with nonverbal sounds. Which was my only way of trying to get them to stop. It didn't work. I also went to high school with these kids. And my senior English teacher made one of the boys who'd bullied me, which I told him later. When he asked why I did not like interacting with the boy in question, read me an apology poem. It was mortifying. In 9th grade I was in a class called Teen Challenge or something like that. Basically it covered teen health issues. Think like physical and mental health. Anyways, we were discussing body mass index and classification of overweight, obese, etc. I raised my hand and said something. I can't even remember what. But the teacher looked me up and down and said, "I'm sure you are considered overweight." It absolutely devastated me. Being a young, self-conscious girl, F-kin bitch was morbidly obese too. Damn her. There is a saying. The camel can't see its own hump. But she sounds much worse than a camel. She had us write one thing we need to do and one thing we can't do. I put, "I need to get more sleep. I can't focus." She proceeded to tell us to change the sentence to "I want to." And I choose not to. This turning my sentences into, "I want to get more sleep. I choose not to focus." She asked us if any of our sentences no longer made sense. To which I raised my hand. She proceeded to explain to me reasons why I choose not to focus. And how it's my fault. Ignoring the amount of times that I've told guidance counselors, who usually tell teachers when students have mental health issues, that I probably have some form of anxiety and or ADHD and or PTSD. When I was asked to stand up and read a page from a book that he knew I couldn't read, I pissed myself. Made me getting a mop to mop it up whilst call me surname, piss pants for the rest of the lesson, and led to me being bullied. Which eventually led to me fighting back and ending up in Borstal youth prison where I was beaten, abused and up-head before I jit out. My life is wonderful now and all this shit was a very long time ago. Still hate that teacher though.